We're live.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of CAIR National, welcoming you to today's episode of the Daily Dose. Saying thank you so much for joining us. I hope all of you are staying well and being safe in these difficult circumstances. And those of you protesting, I hope you are also, marching for justice with your families and doing so in a safe manner. I want to welcome you all to today's program. Today, inshallah, we are going to be discussing the issue that is on everyone's mind right now, and that is how are we going to channel our energy, the energy that has spread across the country in response to the horrific murder of George Floyd and so many other Black men and women unjustly killed by the police. How are we going to channel that energy into actually reforming the police departments, into changing the way law enforcement works in this country, into combating anti-Black racism in our communities, in our families, in our society, in healthcare and education, and of course in criminal justice and policing. So today, inshallah, we want to focus on two areas of the country, Houston, Texas, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, to learn what conversations they're having about how to address this ongoing debate. Are we defunding the police by, ending police departments, or are we redirecting funding for the police? Are we reforming the way police do business? Are we radically changing the way police operate in this country? We want to talk about what discussions are going on at the local level in Houston and Minneapolis, as well as other issues they're facing, including a recent development involving another racist police officer in Minneapolis, as well as Texas with the recent funeral of George Floyd there, protests, marches, and other issues happening in Houston. So we're very happy to welcome on two guests from both cities. Let's bring them on now. We have with us first Mohammed Ibrahim, who is the Deputy Director of CAIR Minnesota. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mohammed. How are you?
Let me unmute myself. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing all right. How are you, brother?
I'm good, mashallah. I've seen you like 3 times in the past week. This is too much, man. This is too much, mashallah. It's great to
We're getting well acquainted.
Yes, alhamdulillah. Great to see you. Great to see you. And we also have with us, actually, we're going to go with you, Mohammed, first, and then we're going to bring on Ambreen from Houston in a few minutes. So we'll take him in on that, inshallah. So first, Mohammed, let me ask you, what is going on right now with it? There's another racist cop in Minneapolis. What is going on? Can you tell us what is going on with this story?
Yeah, so when they say, when the lights come on, all the roaches scatter, and that's what's happening right now in Minneapolis. So there's a Minneapolis police officer by the name of David Pena, who shared white supremacist threats to promote the looting of Cedar Riverside, a predominantly Muslim community, Muslim neighborhood. And he basically said, while everybody's out here looting, might as well focus your energy onto here, as well as retweeting and regurgitating some of the racist, white supremacist messaging that we've seen, in the state of Minnesota, as well as across the nation. And seeing those things during this time lets you know that the climate that we live in today, it allows you to know that, these officers are not only tone deaf, but they lack an understanding and a comprehension of what's actually happening in the nation right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I mean, racism, everyone, is never okay, right? It's never okay for a cop to post racist things. But while everyone is watching you, while everyone is up in arms about the racist police killing of George Floyd by members of your department, how dumb, how you said tone deaf. I mean, that's one word for it, but how oblivious, how up in the sky could you be to, at that point, at that moment, make those kind of public racist remarks? I mean, that is emblematic of a serious cultural problem. I mean, look, you live in the area, Mohammed. There are many, I'm sure, good, honest police officers in that department, including Black police officers, in the Minneapolis Police Department. But is there a problem in the culture there? What is going on in that department in your experience?
100%. And the issue starts from the top, right? So if you look at the police union and Bob Kroll, they are enforcing this blue shield that is empowering these individuals these police officers to make out statements like this during the climate that we're in right now. So that allows you to understand and to see that this is a systematic deeply rooted problem that we need to address, not tomorrow, not a year from now, but today.
Right.
You know, and just seeing the comfort level of somebody tweeting jokes like this or harmful information that other people can take and run with because you are seen as supposed to be a leader in the community. Not only that, you are a protector of these communities, and you are encouraging and promoting these white supremacist and racist messaging to the public is extremely and highly problematic. And individuals like that cannot be continued. We cannot allow them to continue to serve us, because at the end of the day, a police officer is working for the public. They are working for the people, not to spread hate and messaging that could put a lot of people's lives in danger.
Right. So what's happening with the officer now? What does CAIR Minnesota want done about this, and what's his status right now?
So the officer should be fired. Not only investigated, but the officer should let go, because having views like that should be, in theory, should be against, and it should contradict what the Minneapolis Police Department stands for. And although we do have the spokesman of MPD, John Elder, responding to the articles and saying that it has been brought to their attention and that it does not meet the mission and values and goals of Minneapolis Police Department, and that they have to launch an internal investigation. What is there to investigate? We see we see it is right in front of our eyes. You know what I mean? We don't need to look further into this. You know what I mean? Are we going to find out how much more racist he is? Or are they going to go back and defend to say, oh, no, he didn't mean this. He was like, what else is there to do? Yeah, like what else is there to do? Are they looking for other ways to defend them? Because we've seen how they've handled the beginning of the investigation of George Floyd, and how they needed more time to conjure up this defense. Are they doing the same thing with this guy? You know, Officer David Pena should be fired. And what else is there to investigate?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's simple as that. And I mean, look, as Muslims, we believe in mercy. We believe in forgiveness. We want Allah, we want Almighty God to forgive us and have mercy upon us. At the same time, though, if your neighbor says something bigoted, that's one thing. Maybe you want to invite them over for cake and tea and try to change their heart. But if your neighbor is authorized to carry a gun and enforce the law and possibly shoot people, they've got to be held to a very high standard. So it's not to say that someone can't still reach out to Mr. Pena and invite him to, sit down and change his heart and all that stuff. But he doesn't need to be carrying a gun and a badge during that process.
Oh, no.
Right.
No, definitely.
Right. That's
definitely. And especially, and not to cut you off, Brother Edward, but
please,
given the climate that we're in right now, with all of the things that are happening, to feel comfortable enough to do this says one thing about the individuals that are supposed to be holding an officer like this, that does actions like this, accountable, right? They don't fear repercussion. We've seen how emboldened and how egotistical those police officers in New York, when they were giving the speech about they feel that they're being shamed because of what's going on right now, and nobody's asking anybody to be shamed. We're just asking for accountability. Yeah. That is the lowest thing that we could ask for is, hey, if you do something wrong, you should be held accountable, or the process for you to be held accountable to be fair. And if there is no repercussions, and if they're not fearing any repercussions, then you would have officers like David Pena going on to make statements like this during today's climate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. All right, Mohammed, let's pause. Let's bring in now Ambreen Hernandez, our dear friend, who is the communications and program coordinator of CAIR-Houston, one of our multiple chapters of CAIR in the large state of Texas. Assalamu alaikum, Ambreen. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. So good to join you all. Thank you all so much for inviting me here today.
No, thank you for coming back. It's great to have you. So Ambreen, first, tell us about, we just had the funeral of George Floyd. It was in Houston, right? Yesterday.
Correct.
How's the community doing? What's the community been doing in response to this incident? Are there protests, marches, pushes for change at the state? Just give us an overview of what's the community response been in Houston to the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, for sure. I have to say everything is still really raw here in Houston. From what I've seen, the civil rights and Black Lives Matter movement has been re-energized as a result of the recent national and local incidents that we've seen across the board, unfortunately. And so we're all really mourning at this time and grieving for the loss of all of these men and women in our Black community, but as well as here on a local level. In Houston alone, we've had 6 incidents just between April to now of victims of police misconduct. We've lost 6 Black and brown members of the community who have been killed. And so there are a lot of fresh feelings here, you know, about that as well. Let's see here. And as a result of all of this, I have to say it is bringing up a lot of feelings, memories, and trauma, especially from our Black, you know, brothers and sisters who have seen this here in Houston and experienced it themselves firsthand. So the funeral was very well attended. We've even had some Muslim brothers and sisters who went in solidarity and to pay their respects in this event that was filled with so many people. And from what I've seen, it was a very powerful and just emotional funeral, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's, hopefully, again, it's a tragedy, but hopefully an opportunity to turn evil into good. So, Ambreen, let me ask you, this. How is, going forward, what's the next step for the Houston community? What problems do they want to solve? I don't know if there have been recent police shootings in Houston that were of concern to the community. Are there some changes that the community is demanding be made in the local police department or at the city council level? Anything like, what are the next steps? Anything major that's happening in Houston? Any major policy pushes going forward?
A great question. So these past few weeks have been really, really busy for the activist community and for the citizens altogether. We've had marches as big as 60,000 attendees in the wake of all of this. So our communities are very, very activated right now. Part of our work has definitely been encouraging Muslims to come out and, march with us, right? And some didn't, out of concern, of course, because of the pandemic, but we've definitely encouraged them to, at the very least, speak up, speak within their circles, denounce racism, and denounce police brutality. Right now, what's happening, or what happened today, I should say, we held a rally in front of City Hall with local organizations to review the latest HPD budget amendments that were proposed by Councilmember Letitia Plummer, which unfortunately did not pass through, which, inshallah, we are definitely going to revisit the action items there to make sure that there is police reform underway. That's a commitment that we have made along with our local coalition organizations to make sure that justice is sought out after in light of everything. Like I said, it's been a lot. We've had peaceful protesters get arrested, and they've been, mistreated in ways that I'm quite horrified by, and it's been a lot to unpack. With all that said, the police reform would have been a very important first step of many, as we are seeing across the nation. And it's going to take a lot of work, but we're ready to do it. The police reform that was in review today by the City Council essentially was going to look at a comprehensive approach, mainly through the CAHOOTS program, which is one program that I'm really supportive of personally, because what it does—
What program?
The CAHOOTS program. So it would have piloted that program here in Houston. Okay. So that's one of many parts, right? Along with an independent police review board, implementing de-escalation and implicit bias training, for example, establishing a zero tolerance program. And then again, CAHOOTS being one of those programs that would have been piloted, would have essentially helped to provide social justice work, or a platform to provide mental health assistance, and that would have essentially in the long run helped with mitigating those confrontations between police enforcement and folks that really need help, right? So unfortunately, like I said, that did not pass today, but we're not stopping our efforts there, because we know that our Black and communities of color have certainly suffered disproportionately for way too long. And it's time for change. It's time for change, definitely on a policy level. And as a civil rights organization, we're definitely going to remain vigilant and true to our promise and involved with our partners to make sure that these issues are addressed. And so inshallah, we definitely commend our leaders, we commend our activists and, residents here in Houston that are in the forefront of fighting and holding everyone accountable. Like you said, Brother Muhammad, it's so important that we hold all of these institutions that, are created to protect us accountable if they fail to uphold justice.
Absolutely. Muhammad, let me take it back to you. So you've heard a bit of what's going on in Houston. Across the country over the past few days, we've been debating this issue of defunding the police, and I know CAIR, we're, discussing this issue internally and trying to formulate, what position we're going to be taking on a variety of issues, including, how we're going to address the issue of funding and what extent police departments should be funded, how should policing change, all that stuff. We're talking about that internally. We don't have anything to announce today. So I want to ask you instead, in Minneapolis, what are some of the major positions on this issue that community members are sharing? Like, what groups are saying we need to disband the police department and they just need to be gone, and here's what we need to do in its place, and what groups are saying, well, no, we need to reduce the funding and do something different? Like, what are the different, if you could have it in a neutral kind of way, but share your opinion if you like, but kind of give us the lay of the land of this debate in Minneapolis, and then Ambreen, I'll ask you to do the same thing for Houston.
Yeah, so for Minneapolis, I think the conversation of abolish the police and defund the police has been used interchangeably. And also, I think a lot of individuals have ideas of what that would look like for them, and although these are important conversations that are being had right now, and we certainly need to continue to have them, I think it's important for us right now is to rein in the police department in Minneapolis. And working with Communities United Against Police Brutality, as well as Black Lives Matter in Minnesota, and a coalition of others as well, we've actually we proposed a set of 44 evidence-based recommendations that hold the promise to bring real accountability to the police department. And by addressing things like, the culture of the department, and to overcoming issues within the department and within the union contract that, stand against having real positive change be brought to the police department and policing in Minneapolis. This defunding and abolishing could be, although they're not really complicated ideas, we can start by just getting the police out of the business of responding to calls that they have no business responding to, like Sister Ambreen alluded to. So, for example, calls dealing with homelessness, welfare checks, health crisis calls, things like that. When you call 911, a police officer comes to the scene instead of, somebody else that would be better suited to respond to those calls. And those are some of the things that we've been working on right now. And we've these points proposed, and we've sent them out to the city council and to the elected officials to review. And hopefully we get some good results out of that.
Ambreen, how about in Texas? What's the debate look like there?
Definitely. So we are certainly pushing for full accountability and transparency from the Houston Police Department, and from, in general, law enforcement officials. If there is an incident, we expect a full and transparent review, and making sure that and ensuring that they share the records, videos, whatever is necessary to put at ease the public and the victims of the family members that have been impacted. Another part of that is the reallocation of resources and making sure that it is distributed towards programs that have, once again, this holistic approach, right? For the most part, it is going to be a paradigm shift, and that's what a lot of the activist groups are leaning towards, because we know that criminal justice reform is way too big, and it has been a very long fight, and there are a lot of power players in the background, and so we're trying to involve as many people as possible from what I've seen so far, because there is a lot of, once again, just folks on the other end, between police unions, you name it, who are fighting, tooth and nail to make sure that efforts aren't, proceeding as they should. So right now we definitely are encouraging folks to engage as much as possible in advocacy efforts to continue to denounce hate, especially in law enforcement, and to continue to hold them accountable, push for an independent police review board, and create a platform for residents to report any misconduct, making sure that that pathway is also very easy, right, for community members, because unfortunately, yeah, that hasn't existed, and it's very much needed.
Gotcha. You two may not know the answer to this, so I won't even ask it as a question, but I'll just say that one of the things that CAIR National is working on internally, an issue that we've been thinking about a lot, is the fact that there is no single comprehensive government-sanctioned database that documents every police killing that occurs in our country. There are many private databases. There are journalists who try to do it, scholars who try to do it. There's an FBI database that's completely voluntary. The police can choose to submit their data if they want to. They don't have to. I don't know if Houston or Minneapolis PD submit data to that, to the federal database, but if they don't, maybe that's something that you all could be pushing for locally, is for Houston MPD to report their data regularly on a monthly basis. If they're using force against someone, what happened? What was the person, the victim, a person of color? What was the officer's race? Did the person die? All these factors. And the reason I'm emphasizing that is because we really need to solve the problem. You first need to know, where is the problem occurring? If it's everywhere, that tells you something, right? If it's in certain communities, right, only in urban cities, not in suburban areas, that tells you something, right? Where is the problem occurring? How bad is it? And then once you've got a full grasp of the problem, hopefully that can give you guidance about, what you're going to do to solve the problem. And also, if you have an official database that's updated on a monthly basis, that could even be used by the federal government to then investigate these police shootings. If they see one that's suspicious, let's investigate. Let's look at that. They don't have to wait for a viral video to come out, to look into a case. So I don't know if you know, but what do y'all think of that? What do you think about this issue of finding out what these police departments are doing, not waiting for a viral video of someone being killed to come out, but knowing on a regular basis what kind of force are they using and who they're using against? Mohammed, you first, and then Ambry.
Yeah, and I agree with you 1,000%. I think it's really important to understand, where the problem is, when is it happening, and how is it happening, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, what we've seen in Minneapolis is as many as, even if you look at Derek Chauvin, for example, he had 18 complaints against him. And it was well documented, and there wasn't any accountability to them. You know what I mean? So although I do think it's very critical, and we do need to have the reporting happen, we need to have the infrastructure to do something about it as well. At least in the city of Minneapolis.
I completely agree. It's interesting that you brought that up, Brother Edward, because that was something that my board president and I were just talking about this morning quite a bit. He's actually really involved in the criminal justice reform activist community, and is actually working on efforts such as what you've just expressed here. And he would have a lot more insight as to what's happening there on the federal level. But I know that I know that in Texas, there is definitely that push for more legislation geared towards providing that infrastructure and implementation of those pieces, right, to come together to ensure that we are heavily screening and not putting these people in positions of power that are, exposed to our communities. So, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right, everyone. Well, we're out of time, but I want to thank you both for coming on from Minneapolis and Houston to sharing thoughts on what's going on in your local communities. Please keep up the fight there. Stay safe while you're doing it, inshallah. And, let us know if there's anything you can do. And I think both of you are on the national chapter, CAIR National Task Force addressing anti-Black racism. So I look forward to seeing the great ideas that you all have to contribute to that work, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you both for joining us.